Welcome to a tale that begins like any other dream, but quickly unravels into something far more unsettling. Imagine this. After years of saving, James and Mandy finally step into the home they've always imagined, a spacious house with room for their future nestled in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's everything they hoped for, or so it seems. But as the echoes of their first steps inside fade, they'll soon discover that some houses hold secrets buried deeper than their foundations. If you've ever wondered what lies beneath the surface of your own dreams or your own home, this is a story you won't want to miss. Stay with me, and let's uncover the truth together. It would be James and his wife Mandy's first home they bought. They had both saved up enough money to finally purchase the house. They considered it their dream house. It was spacious and had a back garden for their future kids. But they would soon discover that their dream house was the stuff nightmares are made of. But before we start, smash the like button on and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. James and Mandy Pfizer were married for 5 years when they finally bought their dream home. They decided to settle in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with their dog Scout. It took a long time to finally find something they were both happy with. But when they saw the house from the inside, Mandy couldn't contain her excitement, but the happiness would soon turn into sadness for the couple. It was moving day, and James and Mandy had packed up their belongings from the apartment they had rented. They were overjoyed to be leaving. When they stepped into the front door, they were met with something unusual. They couldn't believe how much space they had. It was 2 floors, and on the second floor were all the bedrooms. On the ground floor were the kitchen, living room, and home office. Andy was so happy about finally having a kitchen big enough to cook all their favorite meals. Then she noticed something strange. There was a floor hatch in the kitchen. She hadn't noticed it before when the realtor took them on a tour of the house. It could have been because there was a table over it, but then she saw that it was bolted shut with the lock. She showed James, and they made a plan to try and open it to see what was beneath the kitchen floor. Andy saw that there was something behind an antique cupboard that was left behind by the previous owner. It clearly made Scout uncomfortable, and he started growling. The realtor said the house belonged to an old lady who had no children to pass the house on to. The antique cupboard wasn't badly looking, but Mandy decided that it needed a fresh coat of varnish. She moved the cupboard slightly and then made a strange discovery. There was a locked door behind the cupboard. Why was the cupboard pushed against this door? It was something she hadn't seen before. She knew she had to get to the bottom of this mystery. Over the next few weeks, Mandy tried looking for the key to the mysterious door in the kitchen. Mandy and James were settling, and after a hard day's work of moving and rearranging their furniture, it was snowing outside, and Mandy couldn't wait to jump into bed. James had switched on the heating system to warm up their room for the night. It was then that they both sat up as a smell wafted into their bedroom. It was a rotten smell, and it was so bad that they ran out of the room. Mandy fetched air fresheners from the kitchen to spray the area. There was no way that they could sleep in there anymore. The smell lingered. James wondered where it had come from. They decided to relocate to one of the other bedrooms. They settled into the other bedroom, and James once again turned on the heating system to warm up the room. Scout just stood by the door, not wanting to come in. Just as Mandy climbed into bed and opened her book, the smell returned stronger this time. It was then that they realized that something was horribly wrong. The next day, James knew he had a big task ahead of him. It seemed like the smell was coming every time he switched on the heating system. It was both in the main bedroom as well as the guest bedroom. He had to figure out whether it was just those rooms or if it was the whole house. In braced himself for what lay ahead, James needed to test the heating system throughout the entire house. He switched it on in the other bedroom they hadn't been in. It seemed like the whole house had a problem with the smell. It was time to check all the vents. James realized that it could be something that he wasn't able to do on his own. This job needed the help of a professional. They decided it would be best to call and help. Just as James was closing the last vent in the home office, he saw something gleaming inside. He reached out and grabbed it. It was a key. James showed Mandy the key he found in the vent. It was then that Mandy realized which door the key belonged to. It was the door behind the antique cupboard in the kitchen. Finally, they were able to open it and see what was inside. When they unlocked the door, something terrifying awaited them. Before they went down to the area which they now concluded was the basement, they heard Scout barking incessantly in the living room. They left their pooch in the well-lit house while they went down, spurred on by curiosity. He somehow knew that the smell could have been coming from the basement, but they would find much more than just that. Creak by creak, they slowly descended the stairs until all they could see were dust particles dancing in the light of the flashlight. James then made the mistake of delving deeper into the depths of the basement. He wasn't ready for what it was shining on. They saw more wine barrels, antique furniture, wooden chests, and lots of framed pictures. Mandy started with the chests while James looked at the photos. All of the chests were empty, and Mandy wondered what the old lady had kept inside them. Things felt eerie and unsettling down there. When they hadn't found anything of interest down in the basement, Mandy remembered the other mystery she had found in their kitchen, the floor hatch. They thought that maybe the key would be hidden in the basement. After all, the vents had the key to the basement, so it felt like a scavenger hunt. James searched everywhere until he saw something shining in the darkness. James saw the reflection of metal in the room. It was an old crowbar that looked like it had seen better years. He broke the lock and lifted the heavy hatch. There were strange jars which looked like they had preserved foods inside. They also found a box inside, and when they opened it, they would be amazed by what they would find. In the box contained old recipes. Scout Head started growling again, and they couldn't understand his behavior. There was also a rolled-up parchment, and when James unrolled it, he was amazed to find that he was looking at the original blueprints of the house. It was dated 1887. James couldn't believe what they had just found. They packed everything back in the box and lifted it out of the hatch. It was getting late and they still had so many things to do. He decided to look at it after dinner. Doubt would soon be sown into the couple's minds as they reflected on what they had found all in one day. As Mandy was cooking, she had a strange feeling about the house. They were discovering so much that they hadn't seen or were told about by the realtor. Just as she was about to set the table for dinner, they heard a piercing howl coming from Scout. Their dog had never been so loud and unbehaved before. What had gotten into him? Andy started feeling a creeping uneasiness wash over her. She dropped what she was doing and went to investigate. But just as she turned to leave the kitchen, it happened again. The rotten smell returned. It was coming in the kitchen this time. Mandy asked James if he had turned on the heating system, but his answer would leave her confused. James was getting out of the shower and came down in a hurry when he heard her calling him. But when she repeated her question, she shook his head. James hadn't turned on the heating system this time, and the smell just came out of the blue. They decided to call the realtor to ask a few questions. When she picked up, she assured them that the heating system was new and the house had been cleaned. They just had to look for the invoices in the cupboard in the kitchen, and sure enough, there they were. The proof that everything she was saying was true. But it still did not solve the mystery they had on their hands. Their minds went to classic horror movies where demonic activities caused an unpleasant odor. But this was real life. Surely there was an explanation that didn't include the supernatural. James and Mandy both felt nervous in their own house. They evacuated the kitchen and ate dinner in the dining room where the smell was the weakest. Despite that, they couldn't enjoy dinner because of the odor. The morning broke and the two woke up, but neither felt like they had gotten quality sleep. The couple really regretted buying the house in this state. But when James saw the distressing look on his wife's face, he decided to try and cheer her up the best way he knew how. They decided to relax in the living room. James lit the fireplace, and it warmed the whole room up. Then they brought out the box they found in the FL hatch. It was time for them to inspect the house plans they hadn't gotten a chance to the other night. But what they would find would have Mandy wanting to vomit. They looked at the old blueprints and compared them with the one the realtor gave to them. There were noticeable differences. And then Scout started barking uncontrollably again. Scout was barking at the same corner of the living room. James decided to have a look at what he was barking at. James felt like he was losing his mind, but he had to investigate the barking, even if it might have been nothing. He lifted the carpet, and there it was, another vent. But this was very strange, because this vent was not on the new blueprint, but it was on the old one. James and Mandy were getting worried. James remembered the key he had found in the last vent. Maybe this one held similar secrets. James inspected the vent. He could clearly see why it wasn't on the plans of the new house. It looked like it was an original part of the house. It was rusted shut, and he had no way to pry it open. Like a madman, he chiseled at it and even tried using a blowtorch while Mandy sat on the couch scared. He tried all of his tools while Mandy sat trying to muster up enough courage to stop him. She finally got off the couch and put her hand on Jam's shoulder. "Honey, it's okay. Let's get someone else to handle this for us." James collapsed into his wife's arms. He reluctantly conceded and called professionals, but they would only arrive the next morning. The prospect of spending another night in the house without figuring out what was going on scared them both. The next morning, James called in professionals immediately. He needed to check if there wasn't anything in the vent, as he couldn't open it. It might be an infestation or a dead rodent inside. They came in 30 minutes equipped with everything needed to pry open the vent. When they eventually managed to open it, they made a gruesome discovery that made their blood run cold. They found various jars with putrid liquids in them, and most disturbingly, several animal carcasses and bones. James and Mandy were uneasy. This is what Scout was barking at, and the jars were causing the smell. What did this mean? Mandy wondered if their house was used for rituals and sacrifices, and she didn't want to live there anymore if that was the case. Then the maintenance man then told them it wasn't as unusual as they thought. He told them that he and his team found these all the time in the old Victorian houses. It was Pennsylvania's tradition of ritual healing known as powwow. He said they used animal carcasses to combine elements of religion and belief with health and healing. It seems the old lady who lived here needed healing. But James and Mandy decided that it was best to remove the jars and carcasses so that the smell could disappear and they can continue to live normal lives so that Scout can be at ease.